Hello, I'm Dr. Walters, the chair of the Scientific Review Committee. This video will explain in more detail the forms and procedures you need to follow if you're doing one of the three special types of research projects, which are those that involve humans, vertebrate animals, or potentially hazardous biological agents. First, if you're doing any project that involves interacting with humans in any way, including having them fill out a survey or having them test your prototype, you must have a complete Form 4 submitted. And this requires you to get pre-approval for doing your research project from what's called an IRB committee, which stands for Institutional Review Board. For human projects, you can form this committee yourself with people that you know from your school, but you still have to do this all before you start your research. So the student will fill out this top part and gather all of these materials, their research plan, their surveys, their informed consent forms, and submit those to the IRB. Again, you can form an IRB at your school. If you're not able to do that, you can contact the Scientific Review Committee and we can help you. But most people choose to have people at their school review the project. So the IRB committee must include at least 3 people. And the 3 people are listed here. And notice that none of the individuals that are on the IRB committee, none of them may be the adult sponsor, the designated supervisor, etc. So no parents, no teachers. It has to be people who are independent of the research. So one of the people on the IRB must be an educator. One of them must be a school administrator, like a principal, and one must be a medical or mental health professional. This could be a psychologist, a medical doctor, a social worker, a counselor, or a nurse. So people like your school counselors could potentially serve as your medical professional. So make sure you have assembled these 3 people: your medical or mental health professional, your educator, and your school administrator. Those are the people who would review your project. Those 3 people would review your project and fill out this part of the form and check what things they require for you, whether they think it's risky, do they require a qualified scientist or not, etc. And you need to follow those guidelines when you do your research. Once these 3 people approve, all 3 of them must sign this form. And then one of them must also sign box 2 on Form 1B to indicate that you obtained the prior approval. Again, this is required for all human projects, even if it's only a survey or only having someone else test your prototype. So if you're thinking of doing projects like that, make sure that you figure out what 3 people can serve on your IRB committee and have them review your project well in advance so that you can have this paperwork done correctly. And this is an example of an informed consent form that you could use if you're doing a human project. The next type of special project is involving vertebrate animals, which again includes mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. If you are going to study vertebrate animals at home or at school, you may only do projects that are observational or behavioral in nature. You can't directly manipulate or do anything that might harm the animal in any way. So you can't take blood samples or do anything like that. It has to be just behavioral if you're doing it at home or school. If you're doing that, you'll fill out Vertebrate Animal Form 5A, and then you have to submit all of your paperwork and information to the Scientific Review Committee, which is my committee, before you start experimentation. And we will review and fill out this part. So make sure that you, if you're thinking about using vertebrates, you contact me early and we can talk about whether or not your project qualifies. If you want to do research with vertebrates that is more than just a behavioral study, you must do it at a regulated research institution such as a university or research lab, and they will have their own committee that reviews vertebrate research. And you can have them you can use their IACUC is what that committee is called. You can use their IACUC review process and submit copies of their paperwork, and then they have to fill out this form here, Form 5B. Again, we encourage you to try to think of alternates to vertebrates, other ways you can do research that don't involve vertebrates, because the vertebrate stuff you can do at home or at school is pretty restricted. And again, you still have to get pre-approval from the science fair to do that, or work at a qualified research institution. The final type of special situation that we'll be talking about in this video is potentially hazardous biological agents, which again includes any kinds of microorganisms, recombinant DNA, any fresh or frozen tissue, including cell lines, any blood, body fluids like saliva. In that case, again, because these are potentially hazardous biological agents, you need to get pre-approval, either from the scientific review committee, which again is me, if you're working at school, or if you're working at a designated research institution like a university or a lab, from their committees that review this. So you would have this, you would fill out this form, Form 6A, and there's certain special rules for if you're working with cell lines, microorganisms, and tissues about your designated supervisor having to fill out as well. So again, if you want to do this kind of project, I encourage you to check with the science fair with me and make sure that what you're doing is going to work. And there's a special Form 6B for human and vertebrate animal tissues to fill out. So those are the three special situations. They all have additional documentation required. Again, for humans, you can form your own review committee with an educator, a medical professional, and a school administrator. You don't have to go through us as long as you have your committee fill out this form. If you're working with vertebrates or if you're working with potentially hazardous biological agents, you have to either do it at an institution that has a committee to review it for you, like a university, or you have to go through the science fair and talk to us and get pre-approval. But in all of these cases, make sure you get your pre-approval before you start doing your research. And please let me know if you have any questions about what's required or what forms your project might need.